So my question to you is this: how many of you are missing out on life's greatest moments because you're paralyzed by some devastating experience that occurred and you don't have a cheerleader to help you get unstuck? Folks, this is what I know for sure. Most of us can't catch happiness because we are not connected to the right people to inspire us to go after it and get it.
I am my best when I honor what's inside of me over what anybody has to say. Because nobody is gonna know me the way that I know me. Nobody is gonna walk the steps of my life. Nobody is going to do my life but me. And even if in me doing my life, it makes me look insane to everyone else, but it brings me peace, it is the right thing for me.
Can a woman in this room say power?
It was a Saturday in August when my heart stopped beating. And what happened is I got a phone call from my son's dad. And I actually had missed the call, so all I was able to get was the voicemail. And on the voicemail, I heard my son's dad say, "You need to get to the emergency room. Rakim is in surgery." So I gathered my things, I got in my car, I made it to the emergency room. I got to the receptionist desk and I said, "My name is Stacey Flowers. I'm Rakim Amir Prince's mom, and I heard that he's in surgery." The nurse knew I was coming. The nurse knew that my heart wasn't beating. And she said, "That's fine, Miss Flowers. Your son is just out of surgery. He's right this way in this room." And so as I'm following the nurse into her room, I can slowly feel my heart starting to pump again. And when I make it to my son's room, I can peek inside and I see his paternal grandmother on one side leaning over his bed. I see his father on the other side leaning over his bed. And I have absolutely no idea what's going on with my son because I only got to the part of the voice message that said, "Rakim is in the emergency room. We need you to get here." So as I get closer and closer and closer to his bed, I'm able to see that over the side of one of his arms is this huge white cast, and it's from his wrist to his shoulder. And when I see that, my heart starts to beat at its normal pace again. Still a little heavy, still a little hard, but definitely beating again. And as I get closer and closer, I lean over to the bed and I say, Rakim, Mom's here." And my son opens his eyes and he's just like, "Mom, you heard me." And I was just like, "Yeah, your dad called." He was like, No, I've been calling you. I've been calling you, Mom." I was like, "Yeah, I know, your dad called me. He told me that you were here." He's like, "No, Mom, my heart was calling you." And I was just like, "Yes, son, your heart was calling me." And he was just like, "My heart beats for you, Mom." And I was like, "Son, my heart beats for you." And then my son goes back to sleep because he's just coming out of his sedation. Finally, my heart is beating at a pace that allows me to be able to take in everything that's going on. And my son is in and out of his sedation. And eventually we're able to get him home, get him tucked in. And when we finally get him home and we get him tucked in, that's when I actually have all of my feelings. And when I say all of my feelings, I mean every single one of the feelings that I didn't have because my heart had stopped beating just at the thought of my child being hurt, just at the thought of my child being injured, because I was one of those parents who believed that if I did everything right, my child would never be harmed. He could never be hurt. A few months later, and I'm talking to my son, and it's right around Thanksgiving, and I'm talking to him, and I'm saying, son, because we have a little bit of a ritual in our family, we like to talk about the things that we're thankful for, the things that we're most thankful for throughout the year. And so I asked him, I said, son, I want you to think over your whole year, everything that's happened to you this year, what is the thing that you are the most thankful for? My son doesn't miss a beat. He looks at me, he holds out his arm, and he's just like, "Oh, definitely breaking my arm." And I said, "What? This is the saddest day of Mom's life. What are you talking about? My heart's not beating. What is this?" And my son was like, no, Mom, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I said, now you're gonna have to explain this to me because I don't understand how the saddest day of Mom's life can be the best thing and the thing that you're the most thankful for. My son is telling me about how grateful he is and how thankful he is that he broke his arm. The saddest day of my life, the best day of his life. And he says, since I started my football career late at 8, and I played quarterback, I've always had to be in the game. I've always had to lead the team. I've always had to play. And because of that, I never got a chance to rest and just get a little bit of perspective on what's really happening. And I thought to myself, well, I didn't realize that the game was giving you that much pressure, but I thought, how many of us are living in our lives and in our worlds and we're so in the game of life that we never rest. And because we never rest, we never get a chance to just get a little bit of perspective on the game. He talked about how, Mom, the football field is only 100 yards, but it feels like it's so much more when I'm running. He was just like, Mom, I probably don't need to juke as much because there's only so many places that the players can go. All of these different insights that he was finally having about this game because he had to spend a season resting. He had to spend a season resting, and it gave him perspective, not only on his position as a quarterback, but on the game at large. And so that is what I want to encourage you all. Your willingness to rest in knowing that if you do, you'll get perspective on the game that you're playing. Your willingness to rest, knowing that rest is an agent of healing. Your willingness to rest to enable you to be able to have the health and the well-being that you need so that you can live this life. Now, when my son was young, he gave me this wisdom about resting, right? Like it wasn't until I was able to rest that I was able to get perspective on the game. But it wouldn't be until years later that I would fully be able to appreciate the fullness of the message that he was delivering to me. It wouldn't be until years later that that message would hit me in my heart, in my soul, in my mind, in my body, and I would actually have entered into a season of rest so that I could restore my health and well-being. Now, my mentor told me that people are hard-pressed to listen to you and to follow your advice unless they know you. And the only way for them to know you is if they understand why you care. And the only way for them to understand why you care is if you tell them a little bit more about you. So some of the things that you guys can obviously tell about me is I'm one of those moms that you probably talk about. Yes. You probably also know, because you read my bio, that I have my master's degree and my bachelor's degree, and that I have a company and I travel around the world inspiring people to create real happiness. And you probably also know that I adore Beyonce, because that's in the bio there as well. But what most people don't know about me when they first meet me is that at the top of 2017, I had a nervous breakdown. And when I had that nervous breakdown, everything in my life shut down. And the nervous breakdown was preceded by severe PTSD symptoms, debilitating anxiety and depression. And the only thing that I could do in the midst of this nervous breakdown was reluctantly enter into this season of rest. The only thing that I could do while my mind, my heart, and my body were shutting down was reluctantly enter into this space of needing to get rest. Resting looks like taking myself out of this game called life. Taking myself out of this game called life in such a way that when I looked up, my businesses have failed. When I looked up, many people in my church community were gone. Many friendships were broken. When I looked up, I didn't have financial dignity. When I looked up, all of the things that I had once accumulated into this life that preceded this nervous breakdown were gone. And I thought at that place it would be the end of me. I thought in that place there could be nothing more, but then this sweet, sweet principle of rest came to me. This sweet, sweet idea that if I just rested in knowing that I have everything that I need, that I am everything that I need, that I could be restored, that this productivity hacked around me resting my body, my mind, my heart, and my soul would begin to be something that I could use for the benefit of myself and the people that I feel like I'm called to serve. And I had made mention to you guys this before. If you've ever heard me speak, I always talk about how I'm one of God's practical princesses. And so during this season when I'm resting, I'm very much praying and I'm very much meditating and I'm very much talking to God. And I'm like, okay, God, I'm willing to rest, whatever. If I'm going to do this, I need you to give me a way to do this so that I don't completely lose my mind and, not have anything at the end of this. And I heard a couple of things in my prayer and meditation, and the big thing that came up was, do you trust me? And I kept saying, well, yes, but and it was just like, no, not but, do you trust me? And I'm like, listen, I obviously trust you, but, and how many of you guys know anytime you say but after you say something, you basically didn't mean what you said? Yeah, that. I argue sometimes with God. So he just kept saying, do you trust me? And he was just like, how about trusting me during this season? How about trusting the way that life works? How about trusting life? How about trusting yourself? How about trusting? And trusting eventually became the acronym for which I teach people in terms of them wanting to be able to restore their health and their well-being, in the way that I teach them to do it. How do you stay healthy? How do you stay vibrant? How do you reach your dreams? How do you actualize? How do you create real happiness? How do you rise and own your future? How do you do these things? You do them by way of trusting. And if you haven't already taken out a pen and paper, this is where you're going to do it, because trusting is an acronym and words mean things. And I'm going to give you some words for each and every single letter of this, because I want you to forever remember that in order for you to be able to get the perspective on your life that you're going to need right now, whether you're dealing with a mental illness, an emotional illness, a physical illness, or a spiritual illness, you are going to need to rest to get that perspective. And the way that you rest is by trusting. The T in trusting is for thanking. The T in trusting is for thanking. When I was in the thick of the nervous exhaustion, my anxiety was debilitating. And to give you some perspective on what I mean by debilitating, at one point when I was healing, I had a therapist and she told me to start tracking my time because I was just so overwhelmed with PTSD, anxiety, all of the things that I was just losing big chunks of time. So she told me to track my time. And I tracked my time one time when I went to the grocery store. And it took me 1 hour and 27 minutes to buy 3 ingredients: spaghetti sauce, spaghetti noodles, and hamburger meat. 1 hour and 27 minutes. And it didn't take a long time because the lines were long. It didn't take a long time because there were a lot of people in the store. It took a long time because my anxiety was so overwhelming that I found myself tiptoeing around the grocery store, hoping that people couldn't see me because I was so nervous and overwhelmed and anxious about having to interact with another human being. When I say this anxiety was debilitating, I mean sometimes because of this anxiety, and sometimes because of this depression, and sometimes because of these PTSD symptoms, I would find myself in my bed, and my greatest challenge of the day would be, are you gonna be able to make it from this bed to that bathroom without soiling yourself? Because when depression shows up and anxiety shows up and PTSD triggers are all around and you can't tell up from down, your greatest challenge of the day is, can you make it to the bathroom? And as I'm facing these challenges and I'm beginning to conquer them with a little bit of therapy, when I am finally able to get up with ease, when I am finally able to walk to my bathroom, I start doing that with a thankful heart, with gratitude on my mind. I am so happy and grateful for the legs that I have to walk, the voice that I have to speak, the heart that still beats, the shoulders that make me stand tall. When I was finally able to move again, to go to the grocery store for 15 minutes for 3 ingredients instead of 1.5 hours, I was grateful. I was thankful. It was the beginning of me trusting life. It was the beginning of me trusting myself. It was the beginning of me resting so that I could heal, so that I could be healthy. It was the beginning of everything. And so I'm not telling you what I think. I am telling you what I know. If you want to be able to restore your health, if you want to realize your potential, if you want to create real happiness, if you want to be able to use the power of rest in your life, it starts with trusting, and trusting begins with thanking. It begins with being willing to state that I am so happy and grateful that I have legs to walk, a body to move, a bladder to hold, a bathroom to walk to, and a bed to lay. And it begins with gratitude. It begins with being thankful. R is for receiving. One of the hardest skills for human beings to practice is receiving. And it's ironic because it is the most necessary skill of life. It is around us all the time. And what's fascinating is so many people want to be the givers, right? I want to give. I want to sow into your life. I want to give this to you. I want to give this to my clients. I want to give this to my family. I want to give this to my parents. I want to give this to my kids. But when it comes time for us to receive, we're like, oh, no, I'm good. No, I'm grown. No, I'm not going to receive that from you because I'm an adult. We shut down this nature's way of making sure that things are in balance. And the reason why receiving is such a big part of trusting is because it is nature's way of balancing. I will prove it to you. What I want you to do, put down your pen, look at me, I'm looking at you. And what I want you to do is I want you to take, not right now until I tell you to, I want you to take a deep breath when I tell you to. And then I don't want you to release that breath until I tell you to. So you ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3, take a deep breath. Now you hold your breath and I'm going to keep talking. Don't release your breath because this is what we do when we're unwilling to receive. We say, I have enough oxygen. I have everything that I need. I don't need anything else. I don't need any more breath. Oh, no, hey, you should be holding your breath right now. If you've already breathed out, that's evidence of your need to receive. That's evidence that receiving is a part of this thing called life. Most of us are not able to sustain ourselves by breathing in one time. No, we have to trust that if we breathe out, there'll be more air for us to breathe in. We have to be willing to receive literally in order for life to keep flowing through our bodies. But how many of you are sitting there right now needing help for your mental, emotional, physical, or spiritual health and well-being, and you're just unwilling to receive? You're literally unwilling to breathe. You're not allowing yourself to receive. Receiving is a part of trusting. Trust enough to know that there's just going to be enough oxygen for you to take another breath. That's the kind of trust that you need in order to rest, in order to restore, in order to be healthy. U is for unifying. This is the one that was perhaps the most difficult for me when I was in my season of rest and restoring my health. And it was difficult because what I didn't know is that on YouTube and on Instagram and on all the social platforms where people are talking about getting their life together, they're like, get your life together. These are the 6 books I read to get my life together. You got to get your life together. Like, what I didn't know that I know now is that when people are talking about getting your life together, there are levels to getting your life together. And the level in trusting that I'm talking about is like really getting your life together, okay? It's the level of, I may have to go talk to somebody who's a professional to dig through some of the things that I'm trying to deny about who I really am. For example, when I was experiencing that nervous exhaustion at the top of 2017, what I didn't tell you is that the year preceding that experience of nervous exhaustion, my entire immediate family moved into my home. See, what happened is a year prior, I had upgraded my home to a 3-story, 4-bedroom, 1.5 bath downtown duplex because it was time. It was time. And I moved in with the expectation that I was going to throw dinner parties and just hang out with my friends. But what happened is in about March, my eldest sister went through a crisis and she moved in. Then in about May, my mother went through a crisis and she moved in. In about July, my baby sister, she also went through a crisis and she moved in with my 4 nieces. And then the following month, my second oldest sister, she went through a crisis and she moved in with my 3 nieces. And just before Thanksgiving, my dad, who usually stays with my baby sister, he went through a crisis and he moved in. And so within a 9-month window, my entire immediate family moved into my home. Now, I don't know how your family is, but my family, when we go through a crisis, we don't go through a crisis with financial support, emotional support, spiritual support, psychological support. So as everyone was moving in my home, I begun to take on the financial, emotional, psychological, spiritual support for all of these adults and children in my home. I began to bump up against childhood wounds that I didn't even know existed until my mom, my biological mom, and my biological dad were in the kitchen one day, and my mom's like, "Steve, how do you want your coffee?" And I was like, "No!" Because I hadn't seen my mom ask my dad how he wanted his coffee since I was like 6 years old. And so I'm finding myself screaming and hollering at my parents in my home because I don't understand what's happening. And what's happening is all of the trauma that was associated with my siblings and my father and my nieces and myself begun to start coming up to the surface. And some of those things that came up to the surface were things like the memory of one of my sisters dying in a fire at my grandmother's house, and the tragedy of her death resulting in my mom having a nervous breakdown and my dad becoming addicted to crack cocaine and alcohol, and us subsequently getting taken to foster care. Me and my other 3 sisters are in a foster home, and because we're in a foster home with people who are just not awesome human beings, they begin to violate us in a way that no little girl should have to experience. And so when the police come to take us from that home, they try to place us in another home, but because it's 4 of us and it's hard to place 4 little girls together, they can't do that, so they separate us 2 by 2, and my 2 older sisters go to a foster home, and me and my younger sister go to a foster home. And what I didn't know then that I know now, because I picked up the phone and I talked to a professional to help unify and bring all of these pieces together, what I did not know that I know now because I picked up the phone to talk to a professional to help me bring all these pieces together, is that in a very, very brief window, I lost a sister to death. Then I lost my parents to drugs and alcohol and mental illness. And then I lost my innocence to crazy people. And then I lost my 2 older sisters just in an effort for us to get safe. So of course, decades later, when my family is going through a crisis, I'm gonna open up my gate. Of course, decades later, I'm gonna let everybody move in. Of course, I'm gonna fight to keep my family together, because this wound of losing everyone was still open, it was still gaping, it was still hard, it was still difficult. I didn't know that the foundation that had been laid in the series of those events was me having that of a single family home, but with the desire of building a mansion. I didn't realize that I wouldn't be able to move my family in and not have to deal with that. I didn't realize that every single person who moved in shattered a part of my self-image, fractured a part of me, and that I would need to pick up the phone and talk to a professional to help me to unify those pieces. I didn't know at the time what I know now, that I needed to pick up the phone to talk to a professional to help me to unify those pieces. So when it comes to trusting yourself, often we don't trust ourselves. Often we don't trust life. Often we're not trusting rest simply because we are not unified. We are not one with ourselves. We don't know how to get our life together because we don't know how many pieces of our life we gave up in other traumatic moments. And we have to be willing to go back to those places, to go back and own that part of our past and bring it here to unify so that we can trust ourselves, so that we know when we say yes to something, when we say no to something, when we say more, when we say stop, that that is what we mean. Until you unify yourself, you can't trust. And unifying means going back, sometimes to painful places, to own your past. What happens after you unify, as you're trusting, you step into a place of surrender. I love how Rob Bell talks about how surrender is often the moment that precedes you being at the end of yourself. And what he means, or at least how I interpret it, is that like there's a way that adults function where we're like, nope, I can do it. I got this. I can handle it. Don't worry, me, I got it. I don't need any help. I don't know how to receive. I'm good. 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 But often when we have to surrender, it is because we finally got to the end of what we can do physically. We have finally gotten to the end of what we can do emotionally. We've finally gotten to the end of what we can do mentally. And so many of us, because there's no other option, we just say, okay, fine, I'm gonna surrender. And what happens in us doing that is surrendering ends up getting a bad rep when surrendering is really a beautiful thing. And that's why it's a part of trusting. It's really a beautiful thing. Iyanla Vanzant says that so many people think that the posture of surrendering looks like this. You know, your shoulders are down, your face is sad. But Iyanla Vanzant, she says, oh, no. The posture of surrendering looks like this. Surrendering is about going within and having so much inside of you that all you can do is open up your hands and your spirit and your heart to be able to let it shine and show up for other people. So when I'm talking about surrendering in your trust, I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about this. I'm talking about getting to the point where even in your unwell state, even in your unifying, even in your receiving, even in your thinking, that you go somewhere within and you figure out who you are. You figure out what you believe. You figure out what you stand for. And in you figuring all of these things out that are already within you, you begin to walk with your arms a little wider, a little higher, a little up, and you allow yourself to surrender. Surrender to the information and the insight that is inside of you. Surrendering is a part of trusting, but it's only when you're surrendering this way that trusting serves you. It serves you to help you rest so you can restore so you can be healthy so you can realize your full potential. T, the second T in trusting is thinking. There's nothing that we lose more of than our thinking capacity when we're not well, right? If something is broken, if something is in pain, all we can do is think about that pain, that heartache, that broken leg, that broken heart, that broken mind, that broken moment. All we can do is think about those things, but it is in our thinking that we begin to restore ourselves. Thinking is one of the most powerful skills that you can acquire, and most of us don't do it. And most of us, that is what we need right now. That is what we need in this season, is more thinking. And I often ask people, when is the last time that you thought about what you think about? And most people don't have an answer to that question, but I can always tell what people are thinking about, because whatever it is that you're thinking about are the results that you are having in your life right now. When I was in that season and I was opening up my gate and my whole entire family was moving in with me, no, I wasn't thinking about the anxiety and the depression and the PTSD symptoms that would follow, but surely I was thinking about the trauma and the moments and the wounds and the fear and the overwhelm and the angst of having all of these people in my home to take care of. And those things began to manifest in my life, because as a man thinketh, so is he. Because thoughts become feelings and feelings determine our actions. That is the way of life. And so the reason why trusting requires thinking is because you have to get back to a place where you say to yourself, let me think about that. Let me think about whether or not I want to go here. Let me think about whether or not I want to do that. Let me think about whether or not I'm still going to show up in this way. Let me think about what's happening to me. Let me stop asking, why is this happening to me, which shuts down my thinking, and ask instead, what can I do now that this has happened to me, which opens up my thinking. Thinking is a part of trusting, and it is a taxing skill, but it is a necessary, it is an important, it is a required skill for trusting, so that you can rest, so that you can restore, so that you can heal, so that you can be in your optimal health. I is for isolating. I love this one too. Isolating gets a bad rep. Why? Because people don't like to be alone. But if you look up isolating in the dictionary, another definition that isolating has is exceptional. And so when I think about isolating, I think about being exceptional. I think about, what would I do if I spent a day being exceptional? What could I achieve if I allowed myself to be exceptional? What could I be if I accepted that I was exceptional? So often we spend so much time going, doing, busy. We wear it as a badge of honor. And often busy is just a cover for, this is too painful for me to stop and notice. But isolation takes that away from you, right? Isolation clears the deck. Isolation says, no, it's you and your thoughts and your body and your heart and your mind and your emotions and what's here. I would argue that what's there is exceptional. It may be in its raw form. It may look like a lump of coal, but if you're willing to mine it, it will be the diamond of your life, because isolation is the place where you become exceptional. Isolation is the place where you set your boundaries, where you figure out where you begin and other people end. You figure out who you are and what you're coming to. Isolation is about getting into the space of being exceptional, but people avoid it. But if you avoid your isolation, you won't get to the end. And the N is for knowing. Knowing as in N-O-I-N-G. Knowing. Learning how to say no. Learning how to tell people, no, I'm not doing that. No, I'm not going there. No, I'm not doing this. No, I'm not paying for that. No, I said no so much in my rest season, it literally became a no dance. It was like no, 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 no. Like I just kept letting the people know, no. I'm not doing it. And what I found is that, as many people say on Instagram, no is a complete sentence. No is a statement. No is a demarcation of what will and won't happen in my life. And so many of us are unwell physically. So many of us are unwell mentally. So many of us are unwell emotionally and psychologically because we don't want to say no. Because we're afraid that if we say no, we'll somehow miss a yes. When the truth is that all the yeses of your life are on the other side of your no. Trusting is about knowing when to say no and using your no. G. G is for gracing. This is all about you giving yourself grace, giving other people grace, finding a way to forgive yourself for all of the mistakes, the mishaps, the missteps that you've made already, but also forgiving yourself for the mistakes, the mishaps that you're going to make, because there will be more. But we don't have enough grace for this life. We don't have enough grace to wake up and say thank you. We don't have enough grace to receive and just breathe in the moment. We don't have enough grace to go back to our past to unify. We don't have enough grace to surrender with our arms open. We don't have enough grace to think about what we think about. We don't have enough grace to allow ourselves to isolate and become exceptional. We don't have enough grace to know when we mean no. We need grace. Grace is a part of trusting yourself. It's a part of you realizing that not everything is going to be perfect while you're healing. Not everything is going to be perfect while you're restoring. Not everything is going to be perfect while you're resting, but everything will be what it is. And that's what you need. You need it to be what it is so you can get perspective on the game, so you can realize it's only 100 yards. It's only 100 yards. And you don't get to the place of that perspective without a little bit of grace. Grace for you, grace for every single human that you come in contact with. What I really want you to take away from today's message is that the way for you to have your optimal health, your mental, your emotional, your physical, your spiritual health, is for you to harness the power that's in your rest. And the way for you to rest is to figure out how to trust yourself. It's about trusting who you are, trusting who you're going to become. And when they ask you how you did it, you tell them that you just took a little rest to get some perspective. And all that was required was that you did a little trusting. Thank you.